Hello! Welcome to the podcast, There Is No Spoon. Destiny. This seemingly archaic word still carries a surprising weight of meaning for the modern mind. The uncertainty of the world, quantum indeterminacy, our striving to make our own choices, all of it can collapse like a house of cards when significant life changes occur that our consciousness can't fit into familiar frameworks. Today, I'm not going to discuss the philosophical foundations of this concept, nor the ideas of free will or determinism. Instead, I'd like to look at destiny through the lens of psychology and through cultural, historical, and scientific contexts. Why does this concept still matter to us? How does it show up in our daily lives? Should we finally discard it as outdated? Or is that simply impossible? Let's explore it together. As always, I propose we begin by looking at the concept through the eyes of history. In literature and myth, destiny is often embodied by figures like the Greek Moirai and the Norse Norns. They govern the metaphorical thread of each being's life, from birth to death. Lachesis determines the shape of a person's life. Clotho spins the thread, weaving in or removing possible paths, and Atropos cuts it, defining the moment of death. The Norse Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, past, present, and future, though similar to the Moirai, are more closely associated with the cyclical laws of nature and the cosmos. That's the key difference. While the Greeks emphasize inevitability and inescapability, the Norse focus more on cosmic rhythm. This brings to mind a familiar passage. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him. Oh wait, that's from another mythology. I meant to quote from the Poetic Edda. Thence come the maidens mighty in wisdom, three from the dwelling down 'neath the tree. Earth is one named, Verthandi the next. On the wood they scored, and Skuld the third. Laws they made there, and life allotted to the sons of men and set their fates. But it's not that simple. In Greek mythology, there are other figures responsible for destiny. I won't go into indirectly related deities like Nemesis, Themis, or the Erinyes. Instead, I want to focus on two goddesses of destiny. The first is easier to grasp. Her name is Dike, or sometimes Astrea. She's the goddess of justice and fair judgment. Her name literally means justice. Dike represents order in human society and is often depicted with scales, weighing good and evil deeds. Compare this with the judgment of Osiris or Archangel Michael's scales. She doesn't so much predetermine outcomes as ensure that moral and social order is maintained. The second figure is much more complex, Ananke. Ananke embodies necessity, limitation, and the power of destiny, a force to which both mortals and immortals must submit. Yes, even the gods are not beyond destiny. Ananke is inevitability itself. She's the entropy of the universe, the unstoppable force of the second and third laws of thermodynamics. She spins the spindle, whose axis is the axis of the cosmos. In some myths, Ananke is the primordial cause of all things, even above the gods, making her one of the most powerful and terrifying divine beings. Her appearance inspires awe, greater even than that of the retired queen of the Unseelie court in Irish legends, and meeting her was said to be worse than death. The idea of Ananke is tied to the belief that certain things simply cannot be changed. Why? Perhaps because they've already happened, even if technically they lie in the future. Or maybe because that's just the way the world works. So now that we've recalled some of the mythic figures behind destiny, let's get to the heart of the matter. Destiny comes in many forms. There's the destiny we're born with, the lot assigned to us by Lachesis. Psychologically, this can be understood as our initial conditions. Some are born lucky, others not so much. Does that mean some can reach their goals while others cannot? Unlikely. The difference lies in the effort required. A person might be born with a natural talent for music. Does that guarantee they'll become a musician? Not at all. And the opposite is also true. Someone without innate talent might still learn to play. As the old saying goes, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Will it be harder? Undoubtedly. Maybe much harder. The same applies to material conditions. When we read modern success stories, like the founders of Amazon or Tesla, they often highlight personal brilliance. Yet their starting positions were much better than average. Would they have become who they are if born into poverty, in another country, with fewer resources? Not guaranteed, but they might still have achieved something. Lachesis deals the cards. How we play them, that's up to us. Changes can be made, since Clotho weaves the thread in different patterns. Can you win a poker game with a couple of low pairs? Absolutely. And you can lose with four of a kind. In that sense, people do influence their own destiny. Whatever cards you hold, your play still matters. And then there are consequences. People can be punished in this life for their actions. That's where goddesses like Themis, the Erinyes, and Nemesis come in. There's a clear parallel here to the concept of karma, though karma and justice aren't quite the same thing. Psychologically, this phenomenon is well known. It's the classic neurotic guilt. Jung once beautifully described neurosis as a substitute for legitimate suffering, or, in this context, as self-punishment for moral transgression. In modern terms, the mechanism looks like this. A person does something they believe is wrong. Suppose they don't face consequences for it, which happens all the time. The absence of punishment creates inner conflict. On the one hand, they know it was wrong, hello conscience. On the other, they got away with it. This tension turns into neurosis, the psyche's way of delivering justice. The person punishes themselves with that neurosis. Several elements are key here. First, the wrongdoing must be believed to be wrong by the person themselves. Wrong is subjective. If someone doesn't think theft is bad, they won't develop neurosis for stealing. Second, the absence of external punishment. Even minor penalties can relieve the guilt. I did wrong, I was punished. Case closed. That's Themis in action. But if the person resists and the conflict deepens, the Erinyes step in, manifesting as psychosomatic symptoms or other consequences. So in a way, people do pay for their sins with neurosis. This too is destiny, because right and wrong aren't defined solely by the individual, but by a shared cultural context. No matter how much we'd like to live by anything goes or my life, my rules, the psyche has its own laws. It's not fully under the ego's control, though the ego can negotiate with it. But these are small-scale destinies. Let's move to the main one, the big destiny, the inescapable pull, the necessity, or as it's called in The Witcher, the law of surprise. Is there a place for such a concept in today's world? I believe there is. In previous episodes, we talked about life stories and the mental mechanisms that allow us to weave unrelated events into coherent narratives. According to philosopher Jürgen Habermas, narratives have several core properties. We've already touched on some of them, like causal coherence when we discussed justice and synchronicity. But there's another one, thematic coherence. It's about identifying the central theme of one's life story. What is your life about? Try this exercise. List the major events of your life, connect them into a single story, and you'll likely notice that coincidences aren't accidental. Many seemingly unrelated events nudged you toward where you are now. As O.W. Grant said in Interstate 60, every event is inevitable. If it wasn't, it wouldn't happen. And that really is what we call destiny. Or rather, not destiny itself, but some of its manifestations. You can't grasp the artist's intent without seeing the whole painting. Fragments can hint at the meaning, but sometimes a single small puzzle piece can change the entire picture. That raises a question. Where exactly does this concept exist in psychology, especially in analytical psychology? It seems like no one there wrote about narratives or coherence, right? In my view, Jung absolutely had this concept, and he called it individuation. People often describe individuation as something like self-actualization, personal growth, and the like. And in a way, that's true. But that's just part of the picture. In her brilliant work On Dreams and Death, Marie-Louise von Franz clearly showed that individuation, including its later stages, actively takes place even in children who, at a young age, aren't exactly focused on things like personal growth. So this concept is much broader. One of its facets, I would say, is precisely destiny. Individuation is the path toward what we are meant to become. It's the road to the self, or to put it more plainly, to our true self, to our real desires. Not just the usual or superficial ones. Individuation isn't about what I want right here, right now, because here and now, I'm influenced by millions of things, from sociocultural pressure and childhood baggage to everyday worries. No matter how much Zen masters praise the beauty of Zazen, while it may help you live in the present and perhaps bring you to your true self eventually, it's a long road. And even clapping with no hands is just one variable in the equation. Existentialists, especially Sartre, placed great emphasis on choice. Man is nothing but what he makes of himself, he said. Jung disagreed. From an acorn, only an oak can grow, never an aspen. And the conditions in which the acorn is planted matter a great deal. Of course, it also depends on us what kind of oak we become. But we can call ourselves aspens, birches, or even ashes all we want. We remain oaks nonetheless. That is Ananke. That is individuation. That is the famous encounter with the holy guardian angel in Crowley's Thelema. Not to become superdeveloped, not to reach enlightenment, not to solve all your psychological problems, not to heal every childhood wound, not even to take full responsibility for your actions, but to become yourself. The truth is, to answer the question, who am I? You'll have to live your whole life. Well, at the very least, we have the power to make that journey whole. This was the podcast, There Is No Spoon. Until next time.